Let's talk about book covers and things you can't use in book covers, and honestly, things you can't use in your publishing at all. If you don't know who I am Jamie Dalton. I've been in the publishing industry for around 6 years, and like the majority of that before I actually started putting out books was me specifically working on book cover design, and I have a lot of experience with that kind of area. And one really important part of my job has always been making sure that what I am putting on the book covers, what I'm putting on the marketing material for my clients is legal. So, for example, one thing that I see get used a lot of time, especially on social media, but I still see it occasionally pop up on book covers and ads and that kind of thing, is trying to use celebrities or songs that are done by celebrities or that kind of stuff. Anything that is commercially put out there, which you have to admit, celebrities are commercially put out there. They are like they themselves are their own like copywritten entity. Anything they produce, their movies, their TV shows, their music, all of that stuff is copywritten to them, their agencies, the companies that produced it. They all have copyrights, and you can't use them for doing your own stuff unless you contact them and ask for that permission, which generally it's a no. Typically, it's very expensive if they say yes. And kind of when you're thinking about this and like the why you can't do that, think about if someone took chunks of your book that you wrote and they used it to market their own book. Wouldn't you be upset? Wouldn't you be wondering, where's my cut? If you're going to do that without permission, I expect to get my cut of this. And most of us will be so upset. We don't necessarily care about the cut. We want it to stop immediately because we don't know what that book is actually going to be. We don't know what past or present or future behaviors that author is doing. So we have to make sure that we are steering clear of any of that kind of stuff. We also need to be very careful of historical buildings and landmarks and that kind of thing. While there are lots that you are able to actually do, um, a lot of the historical castles and that kind of stuff are actually part of a special conservatorship from the UK. And those you actually have to pay to use them in a commercial way. You have to pay that conservatorship for it, which is part of why a lot of times when you go to legit stock photo sites, which we could talk about that in a minute, um, they will actually have areas that say editorial use only, and that's because those buildings have actual like permissions that you have to write to and pay for to be able to use. One that's kind of like an off the wall thing that most people don't really think about is a lot of times we think of how romantic the Eiffel Tower is, and you see it a lot in things. But, fun fact, the nighttime Eiffel Tower lights show is actually a copywritten um, art display. So while you can do the Eiffel Tower during the day, and you could do art that's created of it that is not actually from a photo or a video, you you can't do anything that involves the actual lights being on with a picture at night, and you can't do the video and that kind of stuff. Speaking of copyright stuff, you also can't go to Google searches, Pinterest, that kind of thing, and go and use those images for book covers, social media posts, ads. You can't use any of that because, again, those are copywritten things, especially most countries, but the US definitely. I don't know the laws of every single country in the world, but most things, once they're created, the copyright is already to that person, even if it's not fully registered. Um, and so you can't use those things because they're already copywritten to them. And then the last thing I wanted to talk about that kind of helps, this feels like I said an awful lot of don'ts, can'ts, that kind of thing. I highly suggest looking at sites like Deposit Photos, or Envato, or Photo Stock Photo. It's gonna bother me. It's the Adobe one. But when you are looking for this kind of thing, you want to look in the terms and conditions. I know they suck to read, but as part of why I'm just gonna say look at Envato and Deposit Photos. I have read their term. I've read most of their terms and conditions. Those are the main two that I will use because they legally back their stuff with a minimum $300,000 legal backing fee. What that means is that if someone steals someone else's art and they sell it on there and something legal happens because of it, if you can prove that you got it from them, which you have those records in your purchase history, then they will legally help you fight the lawsuit with up to $300,000 of stuff. It's a whole process to go through, but it, it is very reassuring to know that they are trying to verify and validate their product at that level. Now, I do know that they can be expensive. I will say Envato is amazing for getting commercial rights for videos and images and sounds and that kind of stuff. If you're going to do a lot of videos, Envato is definitely the way to go. But Deposit Photos actually has a AppSumo deal that pops up every so often, a couple times a year. I know they always pop up around Black Friday, but also pops up other times, where you are able to buy a pack for like $49 and you get like 100, 200 photos. It's super cheap per photo and they never expire, which is fantastic because sometimes we don't need to use all of them quickly. So I always suggest looking at that and getting that deal when it pops up and going ahead and just having those sitting there for when you need stuff for ads, when you need stuff for the interior, for like chapter headers, for, you know, creating title pages, for creating book covers, for creating social media posts. Go ahead and grab that and just let it sit there for when you need it. And then to kind of, as a little like money saving kind of thing, AppSumo actually has a deal where you can create a sponsored link. And basically, the way that it works is that when they have these sales going on, you're able to create a link to that and share it. And if people get those deals, then they give you credit. So you can end up using those credits to buy everything else that you need. And it's so much faster. I have not had to actually pay for Deposit Photos for a couple of years because I've just shared that over and over and over again. It's been amazing. I've loved it. Anyways, definitely make sure to anything that you are grabbing, make sure to take a look at. I know the legal side of stuff is kind of scary, but it is a good idea to at least do a quick skim over of um, copyright rules for, especially for commercial rights. Commercial rights is the important thing to look for when you are looking at using something for your business. Also, when you're looking at, I should remind you as well to look in the terms and conditions of wherever you are getting stuff from. And this includes for when you get book covers from people, you need to make sure you're getting terms and conditions from them so you know what the terms and conditions are from wherever they may have pulled stuff. Their brushes will come with terms and conditions that they use to paint stuff if it's full illustration or if they've overpainted things. Fonts come with like specific licensing that you may need to purchase if you want to use that font elsewhere or you want it to be editable for you when they send something to you. Um, Obviously, stock photos have restrictions. Some of them will allow it to go on something like a book cover specifically, but it won't allow it to go on merchandise. Um, that kind of thing. Like, honestly, most book covers that are made from stock photos are not allowed to go on merchandise, which, to be fair, our readers, for the most part, would prefer, you know, not to have the book cover, but if they use stock photos to make a logo or a fun, like, phrase kind of thing from your book or, you know, that kind of stuff, it's still a lot of times will say you cannot put it on merchandise. So, just some food for thought. You got this. You got this.